Divine unity is more than saying there's only one God and there aren't other deities. It's only thinking about one thing. So to be thinking about possessions, to be thinking about status, to be thinking about power are all intellectual idols.
The implications were staggering. One God meant one people. No more tribal divisions. To the poor and unprotected, the prospect was revolutionary.
It seems to me that one of the most important things in his early teaching that isn't often talked about is the strong social justice message that he delivered. In Mecca of the time, there was an increasing separation between the haves and the have-nots. He insisted that this was not to be, and that we should share the wealth, and it was this social justice message that I think that really got him a hearing among many of the folks.
So coming with Islam, it was a new order, a new way of life. And it was a beautiful way of life because everybody was equal, black, white, men, women, children. So it had that type of universal appeal, which I think was the reason why Islam spread so rapidly.
Many were moved by Muhammad's message as he began to speak out in the community.
It had the suppleness and symbolic depth of the great pre-Islamic poems that had been created by this people and that had given this people in Arabia such an extraordinary ear for verbal expression, where verbal expression was the commanding cultural force. Some people called him a poet, and there's a Quranic surah basically saying, Muhammad is not a poet. Poets speak through desire. This is not the voice of desire, this is the voice of God.
Muhammad's following began to grow. They called themselves Muslims, for those who surrender to God. They set out to preserve the message Muhammad had brought. This was the beginning of the Quran.
The Quran was revealed orally. But very soon people realized that it had to be written down in order to make sure that it wasn't corrupted and that the original message was maintained. And from a very early date, and it's very unclear when that date was, because no early manuscripts of the Quran survive, people began copying it down.
The Quran is a revelation of spiritual teaching, of both ethical and social guidance. It was revealed and remains in Arabic.
And what's so extraordinary about the Quran is its naturalness, so that it can say the most powerful cosmic things with a sense of intimacy, so that power and tenderness come together constantly in the Quranic language.
With words alone, the Quran delivers its vision to the faithful. Its imagery conjures a picture of the afterlife that resonates with all the power of traditional Bedouin poetry.
Imagine yourself in the desert, surrounded by dust, by the glare of the sun. You wear cloaks to cover your body because the wind will just sear your skin right off your face. And you walk into an oasis. The temperature drops dramatically. There's a quiet there. The wind is no longer howling. Everywhere you look, you see green and color. The world of water and paradise are symbolically tied to one another. And the Quran can conjure that up with just a few briefly chosen words.
Yet for all the imagery of paradise in the Quran, there was no easy description of God. The mystery would remain.
It's very difficult to talk about God without reifying God. Reifying to make God into a thing, or anthropomorphizing God, to make God into a projection of our own human self. And that's why Muslims don't like sculpture, for example, traditionally, because they believe that there's that danger. And the Quran avoids that by constantly shifting the pronouns, so we can't really reify God and get an image, a physical image of God.
Rather than a physical image of God or of Muhammad, it is the beauty of the Quran itself that is celebrated in Islam.
Islam developed in this context where pictures were not favored. The Quran, as it was revealed, was God's representation on earth, and Muslims felt from a very early time that the only just representation of God's word, was the Quran itself, not any picture of God, certainly not, because you couldn't represent God, and certainly not a picture of Muhammad, because he wasn't divine. At certain times and places, people did make images of the Prophet Muhammad, but these are not religious images. These are not images meant to be worshipped. They're not images of a saint or of God. They are images of Muhammad as a historical figure. He's sort of given honor by having a very bright blue background or a white cloud near him, but he's not otherwise distinguished from the other characters in the story. At other times, people did represent the Prophet, but he was always represented with a white cloth over his face to hide his face, so that there were different approaches to doing this. But in all of these are not devotional images. You're not supposed to look at them and pray towards them. You're to learn more about the history of your religion with the emphasis on history from them.